Thank you for being with us. Your book has a question, does one form of religious intolerance lead to another? What is the answer to this?
Well, I ask questions, I don't give answers. My readers should look for their own answers. I give them the evidence, I hope. And the evidence, I hope, is not objective, because my work is very subjective. My books are very subjective. This is not Islam. This is my vision of Islam. But I try to be fair, which means I try to show as many aspects of the problem as possible. That's what I mean. I try to be fair and give the evidence, which I hope is fair, and then they have to make their own judgment. Of course, I have my own point of view. And that's why I write a text, to make sure that people can read my pictures the way they want. It's very enriching, in fact. People reading your pictures in a way you did not intend them to. But to make sure they get my point of view, I have my text.
It's a book about religion at the beginning of it, but a lot of it is focused on Islam. Why is that?
Well, I wanted to see the answer of first of all, the reaction of the Americans to 9/11, because it was such a momentous event. I think it's a landmark in our history. Probably the most important in my lifetime, probably. And as a single event, of course, I mean, communism and the fall of communism is probably more important, But as a single event, probably one of the most important events in my own lifetime. And unless they do something even more incredible. So I had to do something about this. For somebody who'd worked 7 years on Islam, I had to do something. This is why, after a year, I abandoned my work on paganism, Shinto, on voodoo, and so on, and I came back to Islam. So basically, I started in America to see the reaction to 9/11. And then it became obvious that the problem were not Americans, they were not Christians. Of course, I have something about Israel, I have something about the Jews, but the problem is really Islam, because, of course, the others, Christian, Jews, even Hindus, they have their own extremists, and they're as crazy as the others. But the problem is that they don't blow themselves up every day all over the world. I think Islamism has become a world nuisance. So therefore, this is why I concentrated on Islam. It became natural after a while just to work on Islam, on the rise of Islamism.
Some people say that the reason why they would blow themselves up is hopelessness. They don't have any other way
of expressing themselves.
Do you agree?
That's what I say, but listen, I mean, the Peruvians have, well, maybe Peru is not a good example because they had the Santiago Luminoso, they were as crazy, But I think the Vietnamese have problems, the Chinese have problems, Why is it that it's, every country, when you have around the world, you go around the world, all the major problems is with Muslims, so there is a reason. Is it because they use an ideology which is very practical, Islamism, not Islam, which is the religion, and Islamism being the ideology of. That's my question. I mean, why is it we have every day we have people then blowing themselves up all over the world, in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in where else do they do it? In other countries, in southern Thailand. Why do we have that? So this is my question.
But going back to the U.S. part of the book, I was reading in one of the emails there that the publisher. It seemed that wanted to get rid of that chapter.
Right. Well, at the beginning they said their point, which I accepted in a way, was that the work being concerned on Islam, suddenly we have a chapter on the States, which is the French say un cheveu dans la soupe. It's like a hair in a soup. It stands out. But I fought very hard for it. Obviously, I mean, you can see the email. So we came to a sort of compromise. We made the American chapter a sort of beginning, as a sort of, that's how the work starts. And it's different layout, a different, page, a different color even. And then we start the work on Islam. Yeah, I think I'm happy with the compromise. I would have done it differently. I would have played my pictures larger in the book. But I'm happy with what's the results.
You've been concentrating a lot on religion for your entire career.
On God, not religion, on God. And what they do in His name.
Why this interest?
Well, that's why I ask myself sometimes. I can tell you how it started. I mean, maybe future historians have to tell me why, or they have to tell you why, this was constant interest. But it basically started with Iran, the revolution in Iran. I mean, I covered the revolution in Iran, and it was obvious after 2 years that the wave of the Islamism were not going to stop at the borders of Iran. It was going to be much beyond the borders. So I started my work on Islam for like 7 years. And then when you started with God, you might as well stay with him, which is, then I did Christians, and I was doing paganism when this work happened, and now I'm doing Buddhism. Because, I mean, it's not really faith which is my interest. Faith is something between man and what he believes, it's his problem. It's very hard to photograph anyway. What I'm interested in is, I think, the political, social, economic, even psychological aspects of religion. That's what I've been photographing. If you look, I mean, here I don't think there's a single picture of a man praying. But there are others, which are related to religion in a way. I mean, look, for instance, the chapter on Israel and Palestine is a very good example of what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that more and more people are defining their identity, or nations are defining their identities referring to religion. On the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a perfect example, because it's basically a conflict between two nationalisms, Israeli, Zionist, and Palestinian, but more and more it's perceived, doesn't mean it is, it's perceived as a struggle between two religions. And this is what I'm interested in.